On the western coast of Ireland, it was said that seals were not only seals. The ocean sometimes gives back what belongs to it, but never forever. People said that Selkies are born neither women nor seals, but something that exists between the two. Their truest form was the one they carried closest to their hearts. When they rose from the sea, they cast off their seal skin as though shedding a dream. Beneath it lay the body of a woman, pale from the water, fragile upon the land, yet still remembering the weight and rhythm of the waves. In that form, they could walk upon the earth, speak the language of people, and take into their hands things that perhaps they were never meant to keep. The skin was not merely clothing, it was a promise of return. As long as it existed, a Selkie never truly belonged to the world of humans, even if she lived among them. When she put it on again, the woman vanished and a seal took her place. Not the kind fishermen believed they saw upon the rocks, but one that remembered names, faces, and a home it could never keep. It was said that the seals surfacing at dawn had eyes too human for there not to be the memory of another life within them, and that the waves themselves whispered names no one dared to speak aloud any longer. Their skin was a key, not fur, not clothing, but the memory of who they truly were. Whoever found it gained a wife. Whoever returned it lost her forever. The women who came from the water were quiet, as though they had learned to speak in whispers beneath the sea. Their laughter sounded borrowed, like an echo carried inland by the wind. Children born of such unions carried within them the mingling of two bloodlines. They knew the chill of the ocean before they understood warmth. They sensed gestures before they learned human speech. As they grew, they felt a pull towards something they could neither name nor understand. Many stories were told of those who returned to the ocean, of seals swimming close to the shore when someone on land was grieving. More rarely were the stories told of those who returned to the waves but could no longer remain within them. Not every story of the Selkie obeys the order of the world, and this one least of all. The cottage stood at the edge of the bay for so long that no one remembered who had built it. Its wooden boards had grown grey beneath years of salt and wind, and the roof bowed beneath the stronger gales, as though the whole place were slowly yielding to the landscape around it. The ocean in this bay was home to many creatures, yet only a few ever came ashore after dusk. Most surrendered themselves to the rhythm of the tides, as though no other order existed in the world. One of the grey seals began to approach the shore more often than nature intended. She did not yet know that she was doing something neither the sea nor the land could explain. She always emerged in the same place, where the stones were worn smooth and the sand did not swallow the feet too deeply. There the tide withdrew more gently, as though easing her passage. Casting off the skin was both a simple act and a strange one. The seal fur slipped slowly from her body, heavy with seawater, leaving a dark, damp imprint upon the sand. Beneath it, the form of a woman appeared, slender, pale, and not yet accustomed to the chill of open air. Her hair fell loosely across her shoulders. Its color was difficult to name, silver beneath the moon, gray in the light of dawn, as though it belonged to a creature that had never truly left the sea behind. She did not think of herself as a woman. It was merely another shape the body could take. She hid the skin more carefully than instinct alone required, not out of fear of people, but because she was beginning to understand the meaning of return. Upon the land she moved slowly. Her feet ached, her spine demanded movements the earth did not know. Each step required a decision, not the effortless surrender she had known within the currents. The cottage stood where it always had. A faint light glowed from within. She approached it cautiously, keeping close to the shadow of the rocks. She was not seeking a meeting. She was only testing boundaries, both her own and those of the world around her. At first, she watched from a distance. Then, night after night, she came closer. The glass reflected her face, yet the reflection was unfamiliar to her. Her eyes were pale, almost colorless, as though long years beneath the sea had washed their brightness away. Seen through the window pane, human life seemed ordered in a way she did not understand. Objects remained in their places. Movements repeated themselves. The fire in the hearth burned steadily, untouched by wind. She never entered. She never touched the handle of the door. She was only a witness, like a wave that reaches the shore and retreats again, leaving nothing behind but a trace of dampness upon the sand. And yet, with every night that passed, she remained a little longer. In time she began to wander farther, first along the shore, then inland, where narrow paths wound between low stone walls and weathered fences. Human dwellings differed in small ways, the shape of their windows, the smell of smoke drifting from their chimneys, the arrangement of the rooms within. Yet they all shared one thing. They were closed. Doors separated the warmth of the interior from the darkness of the night. Windows framed the world into quiet squares of light. Everything had its boundary. Her body answered the land more strongly with each passing night. The cold settled deeper into her skin. Her muscles tired quickly. Her spine longed for the movement only water could give. Each step brought discomfort. Each return to the sea brought relief. Slowly she began to recognize the sounds of human life. The creaking of wood, the crackle of peat in the hearth, the slow breathing of a sleeping house. Human life had its own rhythm, a rhythm that did not belong to the tides. One night she lingered longer. Beneath one of the windows, the light burned more dimly than usual. In the half-light, a man sat, bent over a simple task. His movements were slow and deliberate, the movements of someone whose hands had long known the weight of tools. After a time, he lifted his head. He did not look directly at the window. He only sensed a presence. She withdrew slowly. Her heart beat faster than it ever did beneath the water. When she returned to the ocean, she dove deeper than she had before. And yet something of that moment remained. The man noticed the tracks at dawn. The sand was still damp from the night tide, and the air carried that particular chill that arrives just before sunrise. He stepped outside the cottage with a cup in his hand and stopped where the grass met the sand. The tracks led from the water toward the rocks. They did not resemble the marks of boots or paws. They were too clear, too even. The heels sank deeper than the rest, as if the one who made them had not yet learned the weight of walking upon land. He crouched and touched the sand. The tracks were fresh. He did not feel fear. Instead, there came to him a sense of quiet order, the feeling that comes when something long expected finally takes its rightful place. The elders had spoken of such things in lowered voices, of Selkie, of seals that could take the form of a woman and walk upon the shore, leaving their skin somewhere a human hand might find it. These stories moved quietly among fishermen, passing from one to another between nets and fish crates. No one spoke them aloud for long. Knowledge of that kind required no confirmation. He straightened and looked toward the bay. The ocean lay calm. The waves moved slowly, breathing in an even rhythm. Throughout the day he noticed other signs, footprints near the cottage, the faint print of a hand upon a damp board beside the window. Nothing had been damaged. Nothing had been taken. There had only been presence, not intrusion. That evening he lit the lamp earlier than usual, not to invite anyone closer, but to mark a boundary. The house was his place. Perhaps she had hers. As he sat at the table, he felt the same sensation that had come to him the night before, the weight of a silence that was no longer empty. His breathing shifted its rhythm, and the muscles of his back tightened without his willing it. He did not turn his head. Awareness was enough. Before sleep, he extinguished the lamp and closed the door more carefully than he had the night before. In the morning, the tracks once again led back to the sea. Order had been preserved, for now. That evening she came ashore again. The ocean lay smooth, almost without movement. She cast off her skin in the place she knew best, among the rocks, where stone held the cold and strands of seaweed shielded the fur from the drying wind. She laid it out carefully, and for a moment touched it with her hand, as though confirming that it was still there. Her hair, still wet from the sea, fell heavily down her back. It held the color of ash and silver. The air received her body without resistance. The night belonged to the land. She set out toward the cottage, keeping close to the shadows of the rocks. The light in the window had been lit earlier than usual. From a distance it appeared calm and steady, unchanged. She stopped where she could observe the interior. She knew this scene from the nights before. She knew how the man sat at the table, how he set objects aside, how he sometimes approached the window. She had already learned the rhythm of these movements. This time the room stood empty. She did not know that the man stood farther away, hidden in shadow, where the path faded into darkness. His view was limited, yet it was enough. Her silhouette moved between light and shadow, calm and unmistakable. He saw the pale silver of her hair in the dim glow of evening. He saw the way she placed her feet cautiously, with the careful attention of someone unfamiliar with the ground beneath them. He did not approach. He remained where he was. The night passed slowly. She wandered through the small clearing, pausing beside houses, looking through windows, touching walls, doors, and railings with curious fingers. Human dwellings carried scents and shapes that demanded her attention. Every object held the trace of someone who had lived beside it. In time, she began to feel the weight of the human body. The cold settled deeper into her skin. Her breathing grew shallower. The thought of water returned to her quietly, without urgency. She turned back. She walked toward the rocks where she had left the skin, already certain of her return to the ocean's embrace. Each step carried the promise of the relief that immersion would bring. She did not know that the man had moved first. He reached the rocks before she did. The skin lay exactly where it had been placed, heavy, damp, the color of wet silver. He touched it briefly with his fingers, then withdrew his hand. The cold felt familiar. He sat upon one of the stones. And he waited. When she saw him beside the rocks, she stopped at once. The skin lay between them. The ocean rested just behind him, calm and waiting. Morning had only just begun. The light was low and even. She stood barefoot upon the sand, her hair falling down her back, her body already longing for water. The man rose slowly and stepped aside. "Did you leave this?" he said. His voice was calm. There was no surprise in it, and no accusation. She came forward and took the skin into her hands. The fur was heavy, almost alive. She lifted it over her shoulder. For a moment they looked at one another. The silence between them belonged neither to the sea nor to the land. This was their first meeting. After that encounter, she stood for a long time at the edge of the water. The thought of returning to the ocean had always been simple and unquestioned. The skin waited. The sea knew her weight, her breath, the rhythm of her movement, and yet she knew she had been seen. The night no longer belonged to her alone. Still she returned every night, sometimes only for a moment, sometimes for longer. She walked the same path, paused in the same places. Repetition proved stronger than reason. The land drew her with a quiet calm that did not require immersion. The man saw all of it. Not only the moment she rose from the water, but also her hesitations, the moments when she stood motionless, gazing toward the ocean, before turning back toward the scattered dwellings along the shore. He understood that she no longer returned by instinct. He also noticed that the skin lay unguarded for longer and longer. So he waited, not from curiosity, from conviction. One night, when she wandered farther inland than before, he went to the rocks. The skin lay where it always had, damp, pale silver in the moonlight, carrying the scent of salt. He lifted it carefully and disappeared among the rocks. When she returned for it, the place was empty. She stopped at once. The sand beneath her feet was cold. The ocean lay only steps away, but the path to it had been closed. She understood. This time there was no choice. She did not go after him immediately. Instead, she remained on the shore, the ocean before her, vast, open, indifferent. The waves moved with their familiar rhythm, as though nothing in the world had changed. Only she knew that something had been broken beyond repair. The ocean was no longer a path. It was only a view. On land, her body soon demanded a decision. Cold seeped deeper into her skin. Her muscles stiffened. Her breathing grew shallow. Waiting made no sense. The night had already taken its shape. She turned toward the cottage. Her steps were slower than before, carrying both caution and tension. The land that had once drawn her with quiet calm now resisted her. The path was familiar, but it no longer offered shelter. For the first time she understood there would be no return. Light glowed brightly in the window. The door stood half open. She entered without a sound. The cottage was warm inside, filled with the scent of wood and smoke. Upon the table lay the skin, carefully spread out, as though it were an object that demanded respect. The fur held the color of wet silver, heavy and alive. The man stood beside it. He did not step back. He did not cover the skin. He looked at her with quiet attention, as though he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "Without it, you cannot return to the ocean," he said. There was no question in his voice, no urgency. She remained motionless. Her body knew the truth of his words. The ocean had ceased to be a choice. It had become a memory, present yet unreachable. The man moved the skin aside and covered it with a thick cloth. "You will stay here," he added. She did not yet understand that word fully. Stay. It sounded like something that belonged to time rather than space, to days rather than tides. Slowly she sat down upon the bench beside the wall. Outside the window, the ocean breathed as it always had, and here upon the land, another order began. He took the skin away that same night. He did not leave it in the cottage. He carried it far beyond sight, beyond any place she might reach by accident or by longing. He hid it where even he rarely went, deep beneath earth and stone, wrapped in cloth meant to preserve the damp scent of the sea. From that moment, the path of return ceased to exist. She did not ask about it. She did not know that one could ask about things belonging to nature. The first days on land were quiet. She ate little. She slept briefly. Often she sat motionless, as though listening for something that never came. The ocean remained present in her gaze, in the way she looked toward the horizon, in the rhythm of her breathing, which had not yet learned to obey the pattern of days and nights. She was unusually silent, not from fear of speaking, but because words had never been necessary to her. When she did answer, she spoke briefly in simple sentences, as though each word carried weight. Her voice was low and subdued, stripped of ornament. The man gave her a name one morning. He paused beside her as she stood at the window, looking toward the ocean. The light was still pale, and the long shadow of the cottage stretched across the ground. "Here, among people you must have a name," he said. "I will call you Kylene." The sound was simple and soft. He repeated it once more slowly. She did not respond at once. The name meant nothing to her. It was only a sound directed toward her presence. Only with time did she begin to understand that the sound defined her, that it separated her from the rest of the world, that it held her upon the land. She accepted it calmly, as one accepts something that cannot be returned to the sea. The man's name was Cormac. He never told it to her himself. The name reached her through the quiet conversations of neighbors, brief sentences spoken along the road or across fishing nets. She understood that the name belonged to him in the same way the cottage did, and the narrow path leading toward the rocks. When he spoke to her, his voice remained calm and measured. Kylene listened carefully, though words themselves still held only secondary meaning. More important was the rhythm with which he returned home, the way he set objects aside, the silence he left behind him. Cormac never asked about the ocean. He never returned to what had been. He accepted her presence exactly as it was. The people of the area noticed her quickly. She had appeared suddenly, with a beauty unfamiliar to that coast, with pale silver hair and a gaze that lingered too long upon the horizon. They spoke of her quietly. They asked Cormac where she had come from. He did not explain. He simply said that she had stayed. Time upon the land slowly arranged itself into order. Days followed one another. Kylene learned their rhythm, the labor of hands, the warmth of fire, the weight of sleep. The ocean ceased to be movement. It became only a distant presence. And little by little she began to feel, with her whole being, that this was now her place, beside a man who cared for her and treated her with quiet respect. Years passed. Children were born, twins. One entered the world calm and quiet, breathing slowly and deeply, as though the rhythm of the ocean already lived within it. There was weight in the child's stillness. It watched for a long time before it moved. The other arrived restless from its first cry. Its body was soft and eager for motion, its hands always searching for something to hold. The land recognized it at once. They grew side by side, and yet each leaned toward a different world. One toward the water, the other toward paths and houses. Kylene watched them with a kind of attentiveness that no longer belonged only to a Selkie. She was a mother now. Time was no longer counted in nights. Days arranged themselves into a quiet continuity in which the children grew and the cottage slowly filled with signs of life. Kylene moved through it with calm certainty, without hesitation, like someone who knows where she belongs. Her silence became part of daily life, as natural as the wind striking the walls of the cottage. Love came quietly. Between her and Cormac, there were no sudden gestures and no promises spoken aloud. There was simply closeness that deepened with the passing years, and trust that needed no proof. They endured beside one another, sharing labor, meals, and weariness. The ocean never disappeared. Whenever Kylene's gaze rested on the line of the waves, something quiet and indistinct stirred within her. For a long time she could carry it, letting her thoughts return to the children, to the warmth of the fire, to the order of the house. Then one clear day, a herd of seals appeared on the shore. They lay stretched across the sand, heavy, slow, and calm. Their bodies shifted lazily in the sun. They knew this shore. They knew the water that lay beside it. When Kylene saw them, something inside her broke. Not a sudden pain, but a longing that had waited too long in silence. From that day forward, she began to withdraw into herself. For hours she stood by the shore, looking out at the waves without moving. There was a vast nostalgia in her eyes. Her thoughts drifted far away, and when she returned from them, she seemed exhausted. At night, she wept quietly, turned away so the children would not hear. Cormac saw all of it. He saw longing slowly become sorrow. He saw the ocean cease to be only a distant view beyond the window and become something that called to her. He knew who Kylene was, and he knew that no love can hold back nature when it comes to claim what belongs to it. One night he brought the skin out. He did not hurry. He carried it into the house and placed it upon the table, just as he had once done before. The fur held the color of wet silver and smelled faintly of salt. The ocean waited. "Take it," he said quietly. "It belongs to you." After a moment he added, "But I hope you will stay with us." She reached for the fur without hesitation. She did not look at the children. She did not look at Cormac. Her body remembered the path better than her thoughts. She left the cottage without a word and walked straight toward the shore. Cormac followed. He saw the fur slide over her shoulders. He saw the woman's body vanish and the seal take its place. The ocean received her without resistance. The wave closed above her calmly, as it does over something that has always belonged to it. Cormac remained on the shore for a long time, as though convinced she might yet return. Her absence came like pain. For a time, the children believed she would return the next day. Each evening, they went to the shore and sat on the sand, watching the ocean with the patience known only to those who have not yet learned loss. Later, they asked less often, more quietly. One child was drawn toward the water, the other toward the land. Cormac waited longer still. He did not speak of her. The cottage remained as she had left it. Her place beside the fire stayed empty, yet undisturbed. Sometimes he stood on the shore at dusk and looked out at the ocean, as if there might be a path across it that could be followed with nothing but the eyes. She returned, not to land. At dawn or at dusk, she swam close to the shore, where the water was shallow and still. She surfaced only briefly, long enough to see the children playing in the sand, to watch their movements, to see how they had grown. She never came ashore. She never called out. Her presence had to be enough. The herd of seals accepted her easily, yet something within her had changed. Movements that had once been natural now required attention. The closeness of other seals brought her no comfort. She missed the weight of a body on land, the smell of smoke, the quiet of the cottage. The ocean was home again. But it was no longer the only one. She was pulled in two directions, and neither felt whole. The storm came suddenly from the west. The ocean changed quickly. Wind rose, waves lifted high, and the shoreline lost its familiar shape. Cormac and the children hurried to gather the drying nets. They worked in the silence that comes only when time grows short. The children stayed close to the land. One stood farther from the water. The other moved nearer the waves, feeling their rhythm even now, when they had turned dangerous. The wave came without warning. High and heavy, carrying the full force of the storm, it struck the shore and withdrew violently, taking with it whatever lay in its path. The child cried out only once, then vanished into the foam. Cormac shouted her name without pride or shame. "Kayleen," he cried, "please." She heard him. She was close to the shore, as she often was at dusk. When she saw the chaos upon the beach and the figure of Cormac running along the water's edge, she did not hesitate. The wave that had taken the child broke farther out. The small body struggled against the pull of the water, not yet knowing its rhythm. The ocean received her immediately. Her body understood the weight of the waves, the direction of the currents, the deep movement of the sea. The storm tore at the water around her, yet she moved with certainty, guided by an instinct older than fear. She found the child. Gently, she caught hold of the clothing with her teeth and turned toward the shore. The water tried to drag her away, but yielded to the strength of a movement she had always known. She carried the child into the shallows and pushed it toward the sand. Cormac was already in the water. He dropped to his knees beside the child, pulling it close, breathing heavily, trembling. When he looked up, the seal was still visible among the turbulent water. She did not swim away. She circled near the shore, within reach of the light from the cottage. The storm slowly weakened. The waves fell. Yet there was no calm within her. The thought of returning to the deep ocean pressed upon her, promising silence and a familiar rhythm. But another image rose beside it. The child lying upon the sand, a small body needing warmth. The cottage, someone waiting. She turned back. She came ashore heavy with water. She slipped from the skin, but this time she did not leave it among the rocks. She carried it with her. She held it tightly, as though it were something that must be given away in order to remain. The cottage stood in half light. Cormac lifted his head when she appeared in the doorway. She was wet, exhausted and calm. Without speaking, she placed the fur in his hands. "Hide it," she said quietly, "where it was, and never give it back to me." He looked at her for a long moment. He asked nothing. He took the fur and disappeared for a while. When he returned, his hands were empty. Kayleen turned toward the children. She touched their hair, adjusted their blankets, gave them water. She lit the fire. She set in order the things the storm had scattered. Her hands moved through familiar tasks, as though nothing unusual had happened. The ocean murmured beyond the cottage walls. She did not go out to it that night, nor the next, nor the one after. Years passed. The children grew, and she, beside Cormac, quiet, sometimes with a shadow of melancholy in her eyes, remained upon the land and learned a different order of life. Stories say that Selkies always return to the ocean once they recover their skin. That no love, no fire, and no name can hold what belongs to the sea. This story unfolded differently. The skin lay hidden deep beneath earth and stone, beyond chance and beyond longing. The ocean remained present, breathing beyond the cottage walls, changing color with the seasons, whispering through the nights. But it was no longer a path. Kylene did not forget the sea. She carried it within her, in silence, in the way she watched the horizon, in the patience with which she waited for the children to return home. When she stood upon the shore, the waves no longer called to her as they once had, not because they had forgotten, but because she had learned not to answer. Selkies do not always return to the ocean. Some learn how to stay, and legends, like waves, repeat themselves only for as long as no one interrupts them.